Yo, what's crack-a-lackin'? Alright, I feel like ranting, and just like to say, this isn't like targeted toward anyone in particular. I think some people in my comments seem to think I'm like targeting them in some ways. Like I've had like at least like 4 to 5 people be like, bro, that's not what I meant, blah blah blah. Like I wouldn't make a video ranting because of like some shit one person said. But this is an issue in gaming that we're just gonna watch the Ninja Gaiden 4 theme and listen to that background music. So it's nice and soothing when I rant. But this is an issue in gaming we see, and it's not just a Ninja Gaiden issue. I see this in every like franchise that has difficulty or challenge associated with them. Okay. So when Elden Ring came out, for instance, all the Dark Souls 3 fans, they're good at Dark Souls 3, right? They've been playing that shit for years. Elden Ring comes out and you see a myriad, just a sleuth of videos that are like, Dark Souls was challenging but fair, hard but fair. And the Souls fans love that stupid line. It's hard but fair. And I'm a big Souls fan, by the way, but it's hard but fair. Elden Ring is cheap. It's cheap. Bosses just spam their anime attacks, and the game is meant for summons. If you're not using summons, it's a self-imposed challenge run, which is just fucking dumb, right? Strength runs are the new challenge run, which is also dumb, because strength builds are like arguably the strongest way to play Elden Ring. You can script pretty much every boss. Same thing with Sekiro even. Like when Sekiro came out, the Souls fans said the same shit. With Elden Ring in particular, and we'll look at hold on, let's get back to that. My review I just made on Silksong, like I touched on this too. Silksong, the same thing. Like Hollow Knight wasn't a hard game, like when they released it, it really wasn't. It was just like a cool little game. But as Team Cherry, got more money and more ambitious, they started making some pretty challenging content. Like Nightmare King Grim, Pure Vessel, fucking Absolute Radiance are some of the hardest bosses I've legit ever faced in a game. Like, they're extremely difficult. The Pantheons are extremely challenging content. So when, Silksong comes out, it's obviously hard and challenging, and again, you see the same conversation. It's not hard, it's just bullshit. It's unfair. Like, what are they doing? And then Ninja Gaiden 4, and obviously like the NG2 crowd, specifically for some reason. I don't know why with this community it's always the NG2 crowd. Like, I don't know why that game has such a like shitty obsessive fan base. And I love NG2, bro. I fucking love it. But like, come on with y'all. Again, it's, this game isn't fair. Tracking's unfair. The fucking enemy damage is unfair. The way you're punished out of UTs and Azuna drops and OTs and all this shit is unfair, right? This is just where gamers are so hypocritical. And I don't understand why you would have this sort of mentality. Oh, another one I wanted to touch on, Rise of the Ronin. You're actually hearing a lot of the same like so-called complaints. It's really funny to me. For all the like obviously there's platinum influence in this game, like that's like undeniable, right? But a lot of the influence is also extremely like what Team Ninja has been doing lately. In Rise of the Ronin, people bitched about tracking. Enemy tracking needs to be nerfed. Enemy damage needs to be nerfed, specifically on like Midnight Mode. Enemy damage needs to be nerfed. Enemy tracking needs to be nerfed. And they would complain, you can't combo, you can't do this, there's no depth, when like actually like Rise of the Ronin might have more depth than Neo. It's really tough to say if Neo 2 or Rise of the Ronin has like a more complex combat system. And Rise of the Ronin definitely requires a lot more precision, just like NG4, where if you want to do like cool combos, you kind of like fuck around and look cool and have fun, you need to be very like precise and deliberate with your inputs, and you can't just kind of mash. In Neo 2, you could just like kind of cycle, spam, mash through your skills. You could basically just like hold the block button and cycle through X and square and triangle, or not X, but square and triangle, and yeah, X too. And switch your weapons and attack, and you didn't really have to like think much about what you're doing. Now, that's not to say really good Neo players don't like that they just mash like this, because obviously a really good player isn't going to do this. But the point is to let you get away with it. Same with Ninja Gaiden. Ninja Gaiden 2 and 3 really let you get away with just kind of like mashing around. Now, obviously, like on Master Ninja and in NG2, you really can't. But in Razor's Edge, like, you don't have to be very deliberate with your combos. In NG2, you really don't either. In terms of like how they introduce like the directional inputs and shit like this. But that's like a different tangent. But anyways, we see the same sort of conversation where people say, I was good at the old game. So if this new game isn't hard, it's easy. It's just there's some unfair things in it. And that is just the most hypocritical thing I have ever, like, I just don't understand that kind of like mentality. If you're the type of person that wants a challenge in the games you play, and a new game comes out and you're really good at the old game, first of all, if they made a carbon copy of that old game, you wouldn't be challenged. If Elden Ring didn't introduce new mechanics, like, and people like so sleep on how much this changes the game, but posture breaking, jumping, ducking, using jumping attacks to like have your hitbox be low enough so the boss's attack goes over the top of you, using guard counters, or the way you have to like, you can't just like spam roll and then spam R1 when the boss is standing there in some stupid so-called neutral state. You actually have to like interact with the boss on a much better level, because the boss actually has a much better AI and can kind of like change what it's doing compared to what you're doing. So you can't just say, okay, I see the first hit of this combo, I'm going to spam roll, and then I'm not even going to think about my roll spamming, and once it's done attacking, it's going to stand there and look at me for 3 seconds, and I can spam R1 all I want. You actually have to engage with the fucking bosses. Silksong too, like, for all the people that have put hundreds of hours into Hollow Knight and mastered the Pantheons and the Path of Pain and all that stuff, if Silksong didn't change up the mechanics in a very clever way and make things harder, the game would have been boring as hell. Like, you wouldn't feel challenged. Ninja Gaiden 4. Every Ninja Gaiden game introduces challenge in different ways. And whenever a new Ninja Gaiden game comes out, people always say that the new one is cheap. And the NG2 crowd can't seem to comprehend this, but when NG2 was released, most of the NGB players didn't like it. They thought it was cheap. And just what's really funny, go watch JTB's Master Ninja walkthrough of NG2 and just listen to the conversations that him and Big Al have. Big Al like really doesn't like NG2. He's like talking shit about it the whole time. And Jay like chimes in a little bit once in a while, like, well, yeah, some of the stuff he's like, you can do this, but a lot of the stuff like Big Al talks about is just like the bad design, not necessarily like cheap design, but boring design, because NG2 does have a lot of just like boring parts in it, which every Ninja Gaiden does, right? Ninja Gaiden Black has all the backtracking and bullshit and puzzles. Ninja Gaiden 2 has just some such tedious fights, and fights where it's just the enemy variety is just terrible at times, and like the same enemy will just trickle in over and over, or where you have to do like a bunch of bow UTs or whatever. Razor's Edge has its really like shitty QTE sections and kind of walking sections, and like Ninja Gaiden 4 has a shitty platforming and rail sections, and it is what it is. Like, every Ninja Gaiden game has some boring things, and they do this on purpose. They do this to try to like break the pace of the game up. The developers have talked about this because it's a hard action game, and they don't want players to feel like they have no break from the action. So that's why they put these in. And like it or don't, whatever, it's in every game in a different way. Ninja Gaiden Black literally has a fucking section where you do nothing but swim for 20 minutes, for Christ's sakes. But when these games come out, it's always the new game is cheap, and the old game suddenly was perfect. Souls fans didn't like Sekiro. Once Elden Ring came out, Sekiro was the most balanced, perfected game that ever fucking existed. Silksong comes out, Hollow Knight's the most balanced, perfected game that ever existed. Ninja Gaiden 2 comes out, NGB is perfect. Ninja Gaiden 3 comes out, NG2 is perfect. NG4 comes out, well, unfortunately, they still say NG2 is perfect because those guys never learned to get good at Ninja Gaiden 3 Razor's Edge. But when a new game comes out, the developers need to implement new mechanics, and they need to find new ways to challenge the player. they can't just repeat the same thing they have been doing, otherwise there would be no challenge to the player and the mechanics would just get boring and stale. If this game was just NG2 all over again, with double the explosions or some shit like that, it would suck, right? Like, that wouldn't be fun. That would just be like, well, I'll just mod in G2 and play that, right? I'll just use Busa's Ultimate Ninja mod and call it fucking good at that point, right? Or I'll use Busa does a lot of work for this community, or I would use his mod to Razor's Edge and just, you know, crank it to the fucking max or whatever. But whenever a new game comes out, we always see the same type of hypocrisy, and people hyper fixate on things that they haven't been able to figure out in the new game. In Elden Ring, this was spammy attacks that have no, you know, they don't stop. When it's literally just like, yes, the boss is constantly, it's not just going to let you stand there and hit it. You're in a fight to the death. Of course the boss isn't going to just stand there and stare at you while you hit it or heal. Like, they punish that shit, and it makes it so much more engaging, and you have to learn how to get a rolling R1 attack in between this combo string, and then strafe this one, jump this one, get a jumping punishing attack, do a charged heavy here when you have a little bit of room, and, you know, really interact in a better way. Silksong, like, where do you even fucking begin with how, like, much more difficult that game is in Hollow Knight, where you have to, like, you know, the platforming itself, you have to be good at pogoing, you actually have to position yourself when you're pogoing with the majority of crests. You can't just, like, you know, kind of like just spam down attacks. The way bosses work, you have to be so much more mobile. You don't have iframes, so you have to, like, your positioning has to be very, very good. You have, you know, you have to pogo certain enemies. You have to, like, actually learn new mechanics and engage. Ninja Gaiden 4, same thing. Like, this game is extremely fast, and it has a lot of, you have a lot of options at your disposal, like, defensively. You have all your classic Ninja Gaiden techniques, which is what, you know, contrary to popular, like, what a lot of fucking people are saying too. No, you don't need to rely on parries and perfect dodges and shit like this. I hardly, like, perfect dodges, I'll give you that. Like, they are super important, but parries and perfect blocks, I should say, I rarely try to bust those out unless it's a boss on Master Ninja, because you're just, unless it's like a slower enemy or something like this, but it's just so punishing. It's so high risk. Yes, it's high reward, but it's so high risk. If you miss, you die. If you miss a parry, you're gonna get hit, you're gonna get stunned, and you're gonna get comboed, and you're gonna die. It's very hard to, like, get out of a combo in this game, because it's not just gonna be one enemy attacking you, it's gonna be 2 or 3. And, like, the damage is so over exaggerated. Like, I was just doing some practice. If I want to do a walkthrough for Master Ninja chapter fresh save eventually, and I was just doing some practice. So what I did is I just disabled all of my abilities, but went in on my, like, normal New Game Plus file to the first chapter, just to kind of, like, you know, try to find actually, like, good ways to approach it, because I don't really have, like, a good way to teach it at this time. It's just like, fucking play really cautiously and get lucky, which doesn't help people who want to learn. So I'm trying to practice, right? And I could take so many hits, like, I would get comboed to shit and I wouldn't die. So, like, you're not getting one shot just by, like, basic enemies like people tend to think. But people try to, like, people exaggerate the things that cause them problems, and it always seems to come down to damage. In Silksong you see this, Elden Ring you see this, Ninja Gaiden 4 you see this. People always tend to complain about the damage that's being dealt and the things that you have at your disposal to deal with the damage. In Ninja Gaiden 4, they're trying to say, well, if you're not a parry god, you just have to stand there and parry. No, that's not true. In Silksong, it was, you have to rely on tools, or, you know, whatever dumb shit people were saying about it, because you can't just, like, dash through attacks. You have to actually, like, get the fuck out of the way, and a lot of the fights are multiple enemies, and your positioning and crowd control needs to be, like, on point. And again, with Elden Ring, it was the same thing. Oh, I'm getting one shot. Like, no, you're not, dude. Like, bosses don't one shot in Elden Ring. Like, they just fucking don't. Unless you're, like, specifically running low vigor. But if you, like, level your fucking health properly in any of these games, like, that's not an issue. And I understand if you're doing, like, a blind playthrough, You know, maybe you haven't found all the health upgrades in Ninja Gaiden 4 or Silk Song or whatever. In Elden Ring, there's no excuse because it's literally, you can literally just farm souls or whatever, runes, whatever, and pump your vigor as much as you want. But my point is, in this, you know, fucking ridiculous rant that I'm doing, is don't be a hypocrite. When a new game comes out, if you're the type of person that likes a challenging game, it is on you to learn the mechanics of that game and get better at it. If you don't like challenging games, then don't do it. Right? If you don't want to be challenged, don't play games that are known for their difficulty. And don't complain when there's easy ways to deal with it that other players find. Again, in Elden Ring, we saw this with, you know, the idiots like Joseph Anderson and Ember making their videos like, well, I did a summons and magic playthrough and it felt like this was the intended way. No, that's an easy option. And people say that with Elden Ring all the time. They're like, summons are intended. It's an intended mechanic. Like, no, bitch, it's an option. They did not design the game with the assumption that players are going to be using this all the time. They knew that they jumped a lot more mechanics into the game. They made boss AI incredibly smarter and better. And they were trying to appeal to a wider audience. And they knew people would struggle, so they gave some options. Like, you know, summons and a bunch of... Yeah, there's so much cool shit in Elden Ring that you can do if you really want to. There's so many things that you can, like, use to overcome the challenge. Silksong too, right? You have tools at your disposal. Silksong does a really good job. I think it's very well balanced where there's no, like, super overpowered option. And plus with a lot of the platforming, like, you just kind of have to, like, get better at it and learn how to do it, which I really do appreciate. Ninja Gaiden always has its ways to trivialize it. Always. Always, 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 always. Go watch any good player do a Master Ninja run in Ninja Gaiden Black. What are they doing? They're using the Lunar. They're killing the crows. They're chaining UTs. There's nothing wrong with it, right? That's just what people do. Try going into Ninja Gaiden Black, or Sigma's even worse. Try going to Ninja Gaiden Sigma with the level 1 Dragon Sword, no health upgrades, no UTs in Chapter 1. That is like arguably some of the hardest shit to do in Ninja Gaiden. Ninja Gaiden 2, same thing, right? You can chain UTs. Ninja Gaiden 3, you really can't. And they tried to like stray away from the UT chaining. But I don't know. You can like sword on SOB fish, but that's also like way harder to do because there's like an RNG element that's kind of involved with it. But in G4, right, you have all sorts of things you can do. You can fucking spam UTs again. You can, you if you really want. I can't imagine like doing this. I think trying to like parry everything on Master Ninja is significantly harder than just playing it like NG2 and using like good fast D-limbs and like guillotine throws and wind paths. Like the people who try to say that it's a parry fishing game and the parry's like trivial, I just can't comprehend that because that is so much harder than actually just like playing it like NG, playing it like Ninja Gaiden. So yeah, this is my rant about difficulty and the hypocrisy of gamers. And this isn't a Ninja Gaiden specific issue. We see this with every single difficult game that comes out. Right, like I mentioned, Rise of the Ronin too. I actually remember like having conversations where Neo fans would be like, the combat has no depth. I'm like, what the fuck do you mean? Of course it has depth. And they'd be like, well, you have to parry everything. You have to just stand still and counter spark. And I'm like, actually, you don't. And I'd like show examples and be like, see, you don't need to do this. And they would be like, well, you're trying to tell me all these these guys are really good at Neo. You're telling me that, yes, you're wrong. Because it's not Neo 2. This isn't NG2. Elden Ring isn't Dark Souls 3. Silksong isn't Hollow Knight. These games have new mechanics, and just because you were good at one game doesn't mean you're automatically good at the other. You have a solid base. And being good at NG2 definitely gives you a very good advantage in Ninja Gaiden 4. Being good at Neo gives you an advantage in Ronin. Being good at Dark Souls gives you an advantage in Elden Ring because you understand the basics of the flow of the combat and the mechanics, etc., etc. But if you don't actually take the time to learn the new mechanics and implement them in the way the developers have intended, you're gonna get shit on. But because your ego is too fucking big, you're gonna blame the goddamn game instead of just learn yourself. And that's the shit I don't like, right? I don't like fucking hypocrites. So yeah, there's my rant. Thanks for listening. Peace.